And I'll just send out a tweet.
Hello, everybody. So it's Argent. I'm here with my buddy Fritz Imperial, and we
Hello.
just figured we'd do a while everybody's off enjoying sports ball. We'll just do our own little stream, and we don't have anything in particular planned. So I guess we'll just talk about various stuff and maybe field questions from the chat.
All
So,
right.
so you had said you went to a Near Automata concert.
hmm Even though the game came out 3 years ago, there's still such a devoted fan base because the original game, the original Nier Gestalt game, came out 10 years ago, and I guess as part of an anniversary for that, because they'd already done concerts for the game, basically doing full orchestral versions of most of the soundtrack. They did a bunch of them in Japan, and now they're doing them in North America and the UK. So they just did it they did it a couple weeks ago in LA, and then I went to the one in Chicago, and it was really really nice. And it was funny to see there was a whole bunch of people in cosplay, which was cool, and everybody was like super polite and nice, and they had the director of the game, the composer, one of the lead vocalists, and the producer of the game. And they were all like super nice and just talked about how much it's all because of the fans. And my dad was there because he also wanted to go to Chicago so he could go to the art museum. And he really liked the concert, and he told me that compared to a Bob Dylan concert we went to last year, he said the Bob Dylan concert sucked because Bob Dylan acted like a self-entitled kind of spoiled person. Like, he didn't perform any of the songs people like. He just performed his weird new stuff. Yes, Yoko Taro was there in his full getup, wearing the weird mask he always wears in public. But in this one, everyone was super cool to each other, and the only problem was that the translator was fucked up. I mean, the translator really screwed up, uh, and did not do a good job, or seemed to be really nervous. So they eventually just had the vocalist translate for them, because I guess she spoke Japanese as well. But music was all really nice, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. And I know, Arjun, you've said you did not like the game.
No, I really hated Near Automata.
How?
But what's good about Near Automata?
Uh, I mean, I'm incredibly biased towards it, so I would say almost most things about it, but predominantly for me, the music and the story. Because ultimately, the story, by the end, is a complete refutation of Sartre. It essentially completely reverses and says, actually, no, essence precedes existence, bitch.
Um, to be fair, I just got so bored with it, I kind of stopped paying attention after a couple
Mm.
hours. Um, I didn't like it. I didn't like the art style. I felt it was really you just I just found the environments really bland. Um,
That is something I do agree with, and the fact that, I'm playing right now. I'm playing my first Final Fantasy game, 15, and I'm only playing it because I know it because it was on sale, and I know it doesn't have traditional JRPG turn-based combat, which is
mhm.
why I still can't stand it. It's why I finally figured out after many years, why is it that I just can't get into the Pokemon games? And it's just because I hate that turn-based combat. I hate it.
Right.
And but anyways, Final Fantasy 15 is, of course, and a lot of these types of games have these beautiful, incredible looking environments that you just want to live in. Nier Automata doesn't have that, and that's actually kind of interesting. That it is kind of this, the art style kind of reminds me of the Matrix in a lot of ways. Same with the story, in that it is this kind of green and gray haze over everything. And there is a lot of similarity with the Matrix in the sense of machines taking over, but not all. But it expands on what I found was the most interesting idea of the Matrix, of what happened with Agent Smith, in which certain programs just start going haywire and break off from the main server.
I don't know, the fact that they have 26 endings, I think is really pretentious.
Well, all but the first five are just jokes. You can remove your operating system from your chipset, and that will kill you. and then it just like, and I think that's hilarious. Or if you eat a fish, a certain fish, you will get poisoned and die. And I thought that was great.
Mm-hmm. There's that. I just found the combat very repetitive.
Yeah, it was certainly a game that cared more about its story and its presentation than about like pure
I'm just
gameplay.
kind of biased, maybe against beat 'em ups.
I think it's fun. I've never played any of the Devil May Cry games, so I can't. This is probably the only one.
I thought Devil May Cry sucked, but that's just me.
All of them, or just?
I think the only one I played is 4.
I think that's the one everyone's. No, 2 is the one everyone says is terrible.
4 I thought was pretty bad. I Bayonetta I thought was like mediocre. Let me see. I just am not a fan of hack and slash in general.
Yeah, so, and Akira Joe Kurusu, I know who you are. I'm so sorry you got banned on Twitter. In the latest wave of people to get banned on Twitter. Yeah, 2B man, 2B. Yeah, I mean, ultimately though, towards the end, I don't want to give anything away. Is that 9S seems to become the main character, and the reason why 2B is kind of the way she is kind of makes more sense, in that she is kind of presented as like the ultimate waifu for 9S and the player, who essentially the game kind of treats as the same person. And then when a certain thing happens to her, like, it completely throws that out the window, and 9S kind of descending into a depressive, crazed state is actually really excellent.
I think to me, I just found the gameplay really like unpleasant, and that kind of ruined the rest of it, and it just kind of degenerated in me just trying to like go through it as quickly as possible.
It's not. I guess it's not for everyone.
No, it's a very like postmodern video games or art thing. So I think it's kind of one of those things that's not really intended for everybody. Like, yeah, Dark Souls is not intended for everybody.
Mm-hmm. On kind of the opposite end, I have discovered probably a genre of games that I really do like, but I've only played 2 of them that I know of, and it seems to be an extremely limited genre of turn-based tactical shooters with XCOM and Valkyria Chronicles, in which the stories are kind of okay, but like I love that type of gameplay, which is weird because
which Valkyria Chronicles have you played?
I've played 1 and 4.
Yeah, the 2 and 3 look really good, but they're only on PlayStation, which I don't have.
Go ahead.
I like both of them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That one guy is a Giga Chad. I'm trying to remember what his name is.
Mm-hmm.
Waltz?
In the 4th one. But...
Yeah, Sorry, go on.
And then my waifu is of course Minerva from the 4th one, the red-haired lady that's like this officer that hates Claude because he keeps one-upping her.
That guy in the end, I think his name is Waltz.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, he gets a nuke to fall in love with him because he's that much of a Chad.
And they're just sitting on a bench.
He's just such a... And he's like, you're my soulmate. You're the one I'm destined to battle to prove how alpha I am.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, but you were right. It's like how it does kind of follow very much Operation Barbarossa.
Yeah, it's explicitly based on it.
Even to the point in which the whole idea that like they're not getting their winter uniforms, which is a huge problem, which was a huge problem in that operation. Like, one of the arguments as to why the Russians managed to hold out and was because their uniforms were so much more like practically designed of being just these thick wool coats, whereas the Germans were not prepared. They were wearing much more flashy uniforms.
Here, I'm putting a picture of Waltz and his waifu up. He's just such a fucking beast. I like Claude. Claude. I found her name to be kind of annoying.
His waifu?
Yeah, I found her a little annoying.
Oh, Riley Miller? Yeah.
Kai is really hot, but I liked Raz a lot. Raz was a Chad.
Mm-hmm. Even though he's the game's equivalent of the Jews.
Is he? Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
they're more gypsies.
yeah, they are a little more, but say that's the thing that I didn't like. Here, post this. This is my waifu. Post this. I put it in the Discord. But anyways,
I admit I found Minerva kind of annoying. I'm gonna be honest.
well, it's kind of her point is she's super elitist and she's like pissed at Claude because he's better he's better than her. Or, like I read that like and she kept getting the second best high scores in like military academies because Claude kept getting all the first one. But Claude is a much nicer character. I like in your review you said like he's more of the strong and silent alpha type character. Whereas,
no, Claude's a really good guy. Like I'd love to be
but
friends with him.
But he's not like autistic like Welkin was.
Welkin is an autist. Well, I don't know if he's autistic. No, he might actually be autistic. I like Welkin a lot. I like Alicia a lot. I like most of the characters in both games. There aren't that many people like who I actively dislike. But yeah, my issue with 4 is I just thought the ending was really lame.
To me, I mean, first off, the Japanese, of course, are not going to be massive fans of using nuclear weapons. Like, being the one country that actually suffered under them kind of probably gave them a certain perspective. But I think the point of the ending was that essentially it's them not falling towards like neoliberal machinations of it's okay to kill as many people as possible so long as we win, which is essentially what the mindset of the Allies were in both World Wars.
Right, but I kind of felt like the whole game was leading up to them using the nuke, and them not using it just kind of like came out of nowhere, and it was like a plot device.
But didn't them using it come out of nowhere as well?
I mean, that was always the goal, was to reach the capital and blow it up.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you that if they had just said, like, hey, if they had, like, a loudspeaker, it would have been kind of stupid if they had said, hey, we have a nuke, agree to a ceasefire or we're using it. Like, that could have been okay, but...
Yeah, that would have been fine. Surrender or we will level the entire city. Like, that might have worked. It just kind of came out of nowhere. The last level in that game I remember I really hated. The last couple.
Yeah, I finished it, and...
where they were timed.
Yeah, I don't like it when games like this have gimmicks. I like it when it's much more straightforward.
Oh, like the fucking tank. The giant tank in the first game.
You mean, which one? Yeah, that level sucked. That's where I...
The desert level?
You're the only person I know that has ever played this game. Except for me.
I rage quit when I was playing it for PC. For Switch, I just save scummed. Like, I just kept saving, like, every action and reloading. Mm-hmm. If I missed a shot.
If you like that type of combat, you should try XCOM.
No, I like the XCOM. I like XCOM 2 War of the Chosen is really good.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I didn't like about War of the Chosen is that the Chosen don't seem to like quite gel with the bit more of the hard science fiction. They're just kind of like, ooh, we're these evil. They seem like they're from just like I don't know some other science fiction space opera type show where they're just continuously taunting you. It does feel like really good when you murder them though.
I feel for XCOM 2 you have to get the mod that gets rid of the Avatar project. Because I feel it advances way too fast, and it's just... It's not the kind of game, yeah. Sorry, go on. That's
the problem the first one had, and that, like, they make a specific point in the second one when Central is saying, like, oh, you know, isn't it nice we don't have the council on our back anymore, so we don't... It's like, hey, isn't it nice you don't have to worry about the panic levels in other countries, because there are no other countries anymore. But then it's like, hey, here's the Avatar project. We have no idea what it does, but... Like, apparently, if it reaches a certain arbitrary level, everyone dies. But XCOM is kind of based, because I like how it's basically just, you know, none of this covert operations, none of this, like, maybe we should try and deal with the aliens. It's just, there's aliens, we have to fucking murder all of them.
I love how the Illuminati are good guys. Like how the Council are obviously the Illuminati.
And I also like how in XCOM 2, the XCOM games is basically Alex Jones was right about everything because they literally have like psychic vampires and they're just stealing people's DNA to make horrible abominations out of them, and it's like a globalist nightmare. It is. You have this government, this one world government that says like, "Hey, we're curing all these diseases, and we can everybody can come and live in these giant mega cities," and you're a resistance formed out of like wanting to restore nation states.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's yeah, the turn-based tactical is good. For Valkyria Chronicles, it just took me a while to figure out like what you were supposed to do. Because it's kind of a bit overwhelming.
The thing though I found in 4 is it had a lot better, less gimmick levels. Like, as much as I didn't like the desert level, in the first one, the worst level by far is when the Federation tries to capture the princess. And it's just like, there's no actual different way to go about it. You just have to set your soldiers up in this explicit order.
Oh, and then you win on the first turn.
Yes.
No, that level was shit. The desert level in the first game, did you find out the way to cheese that?
How do you cheese it?
Okay, so you know how like after a couple turns a whole bunch of reinforcements show up?
Mm-hmm.
If you move a shock trooper to behind where they spawn, the shock trooper will kill all of them with suppressing fire. Like when they show up, they are like the AI just auto moves them forward. It's kind of hard to explain, but just your shock trooper will just kill all of them. Even then, the level's still hard because what's her name shows up and just Sylvaria shows up and just curb stomps everything.
Mm-hmm. But thinking about that is like the kind of book or the story I want to write is basically I mean, at its simplest, it's basically what if the Empire were the good guys, or at least it's still told from the point of view of an Empire in space against basically the evil, degenerate Federation that wants to destroy traditions. Because something I've been thinking about is that, like, what's interesting is about the two most recent portrayals of the Joker, not the Joaquin Phoenix and the Heath Ledger one. Is it seems like Heath Ledger's Joker seemed to appeal to a lot of like left wing, to a lot of people on the left, whereas Joaquin Phoenix's Joker 10 years later seems to appeal to a lot of people on the right. And that's kind of interesting. And for me, it's partially because I think superheroes, where you can make it, the distributors made a good argument that you could look at the Christopher Nolan Batman movies as being very conservative in nature, as kind of standing for conservatism against kind of radical reactionaries like Ra's al Ghul or like the far left like the Joker. But it seems like, I don't know, to me, like the modern Marvel superhero universe and all that seems to be like
no, Marvel has always been more pause than DC. This is well known.
Yeah, but to me it seems like that's kind of the left's wet dream of, they have this army of superhumans that are completely and totally loyal to the neoliberal project, and the meta villains, not just the ordinary criminal scum, it's just the big villains are the ones that are trying to challenge that system. And in a way you could just say, like, the entire point of all of these Marvel movies is just try and preserve the status quo. It's protecting liberalism with these superhumans who will not hesitate to kill anybody that disagrees with it.
Yeah, although in like Captain America Winter Soldier, it felt like more just kind of an American liberty thing than necessarily a neoliberal thing. Mm-hmm. Which doesn't bother me as much.
Mm-hmm.
In what do you think Gallia was in Valkyria Chronicles? Like, was it Belgium or Switzerland?
Gallia, well, territorial wise, I know Europa is not. It's not a one-for-one recreation of Europe the way it is in like the Saga of Tanya the Evil, but location-wise, it's in the Baltic, and I guess it's kind of like Poland/Lithuania, something like that.
Is it? I thought it was where Switzerland was. Let me see here.
No, it's in the Baltic. It's right around where like Latvia would be. But of course, it's a Latvia that has a super diverse has super diverse biomes. It has a whole desert in the middle of the country that apparently that they say that the gypsies made. When they couldn't steal enough from the natives, they said, we're just going to make a desert.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. It reminds me the most of like Belgium, though, or something like that.
One of these small countries that fights back.
Because they have conscription.
Mm-hmm. It's universal male and female conscription, which in the fictional 30s, yeah, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I don't like this in the fourth one, like there's actually a trans character.
What?
It's one of the soldiers you can one of the soldiers you can use as trans. So the only mission I use them on is the one where you sacrifice Raz just so they would die.
So does Raz die? Because doesn't he come back
Yes.
or something in the DLC?
No. I think the DLC is basically the DLC is the one with the beach, right?
Maybe.
Well, I have all of the DLC for it because I got it in like in a bundle, but it's like
I feel bad that Raz got friend zoned.
he still died. I mean, I don't think Kai's going to date anybody else anytime soon, but
Why does Kai randomly look Chinese? Asian is the only character who looks Asian.
because it's anime and they make the characters look however the hell they. There is an actual like analogous Japanese character in 4. One of the soldiers you could recruit. She is like from this country that is. Fritz is straight up ruthless. You're damn right I am. But in the she's apparently just like a liaison, where she's just like monitoring things for this country in the east, and like she's just she's basically Japanese. I do love how they basically handle the beach episode, which is you have to go through a mission fast enough in order to collect swimsuits. But the thing is, it doesn't discriminate because the girls and the guys all get swimsuits, so it's fine.
I remember there was like the cringiest article ever. It was Raz as a young Brett Kavanaugh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there was like a bunch of people who complained that the game like promoted sexual assault because of the one scene where Raz like slaps Kai's ass.
Yeah, it's the actual Kai doesn't have an ass this nice, but I did figure out for gameplay wise, because the gameplay is really fun. I especially just love wrecking everybody with the Grenadier class, which is actually just a mortar team.
Yeah, they're kind of OP and.
But I just basically have super upgraded. I just focus on scouts as much as I can, because I can just give them as much damage boost as possible with the upgraded weapons, just so I can have super high damage sniper proto snipers.
Snipers were a class that sucked until they were really good. I find, like, they're horrible at the beginning of the game. But once you start to get like better weapons, they become like absurdly good. I love just cheesing the game. I think that's one of the funniest things, like just hiding behind shit.
Oh yeah, well, if I come back to it, because I want to play the game, the fourth one again, and because I eventually would like to do like a gaming video. It's just I have to figure out a good free editing software. I got DaVinci Resolve, which is a free one. I just really need to practice with it. But anyways, like there is a difference because in XCOM you have Overwatch, which if people don't know is when you set up your troops, if you haven't used all your movement points, you can basically have it so that if they see any enemy aliens moving, they'll automatically take a shot at them, which was weird as a difference from Valkyria Chronicles, where all soldiers just do that automatically.
Yeah, although they sometimes do and they sometimes don't. The weird thing is the machine gun on your tank is very inconsistent.
I don't like tanks in that game. I really don't.
I try to remember. I think the one in the first game was actually an E50. or E25. It was really weird what the Edelweiss was.
What was it? What was it based on then?
I think it was based on the E20. Let me just look at what it was based on.
What kind of tank is that? I've not heard of that.
Just give me a second. It was one of the at the end of the World War II, Germany designed the E series, and the idea was that there was only going to be like 4 or 5 vehicles they would produce. And
was it a variant of the Panther or the Tiger? Or...
No, they were going to have the E. The number is the weight. So like the E25 was going to be the tank destroyer. I think it was the E50 was going to be the medium tank. The E75 was the heavy tank.
The thing I didn't really like is that I never felt like having a second tank was ever necessary.
I thought the APC wasn't that useful.
That's in the 4th one, yeah. No, I prefer just to move the troops.
Let me see. What is the Edelweiss based off of? E50. Okay, yeah, it's based on the E50. Okay. I'll just pull up a picture of the E50. I forget. The second one was wasn't it just a Sherman?
Yeah, basically it was a Sherman. Look, I've seen Girls in Panzer twice, so I know my tanks. I haven't seen anything outside of the original show. Oh, you've seen it too?
No, I was gonna say I like Shermans. I think the Sherman is a very underrated tank.
It was a useful tank for what it was. It just wasn't sexy the way like the Panther was.
Yeah, but it like worked, and that's like a change from anything. And that's why I kind of feel like Star Wars is to a certain extent an accurate portrayal of what Nazi Germany's, at least near the end of the war, their like philosophy was.
Yeah, because here's the thing: is like, imagine if instead of building the Death Star, they just built 1,600 Star Destroyers and parked them right outside of a rebel planet. Like, what are the rebels gonna do? What are they gonna do?
Because like the Germans were like, oh, we're gonna build the Mouse. We're gonna build the Ferdinand.
We're gonna build the Rot, the one that would have had 6 anti-aircraft guns. It would have been the size of a city block.
Someone says, oh yeah, that looks a lot like it. Yeah, that's the E50. Like I said, they were
a nice looking tank.
They were gonna standardize it. Actually, in World of Tanks, my favorite tank other than the Tiger II is probably the E25. I'll just pull up a picture of the E25. So the E25.
Awesome. The one I've been playing though, or the game I play though, I don't play World Tanks. I play War Thunder.
Yeah.
But by far my favorite. I know it's technically not a tank, and technically it's an armored fighting vehicle. Is the Stug or the German infantry support vehicle, the Stug.
The Stug is a tank destroyer, I think. Is technically what it is.
It was originally designed for infantry support.
Yeah.
That's a Hetzer.
No, that's an E25. It's based off of the Hetzer.
Which, of course, was built on the chassis of the T-38 Czech tank.
So this was going to be the only tank destroyer they were going to use. They're just going to mass produce E25s.
Basically, they should have done something like this 5 years earlier.
Yeah, because that was an issue. The Panzer IV actually was probably up there for best tank of the war, just because it was reliable. It was like one of the few reliable tanks they built, and I think they just. Well, while we're talking about the E series, here's the E75. That was the heavy tank.
Sorry, I had to get another Kirin Ichiban premium malt beer.
Let me see here.
It is my weed beer, yes. I do like it, though. I think one day I'm going to have to get both Kirin Ichiban and Sapporo and compare which Japanese-style beer is better. I think I like Kirin Ichiban more. Though I'm not a big fan of stouts or dark beers.
Does the rat ever show up in Girls in Panzer?
No. The mouse does, and the way the way they beat it in the big showdown at the end is hilarious, and just like okay, like I remember somebody criticized like a part of it for saying like the tanks were going up too steep a hill, and I'm like, that's what you're complaining about, because like I'm fine with them throwing certain logic out the window, like the fact that this would not be the most dangerous sport ever, because even though they're not firing like actual APC rounds, they're still firing really fast projectiles at high speeds that like will make part of the tank light up and say, "Oh, this tank was hit," and would have it simulates.
Also, Girls in Panzer was kind of based because it was like it develops your feminine skills to be a better wife
and mother. It also takes place in kind of, I guess, like a kind of a post apocalypse, or because the fact that the whole thing is set on this gigantic aircraft carrier, not the whole thing, but the school they're in is basically like a town-sized aircraft carrier that has like mountains and lakes on it,
right?
Which is ridiculous and great. But anyways, the way they defeat the mouse, if I can remember correctly, it's like one of them like is driving a smaller tank and just like drives on top of the mouse and starts shooting at it, and eventually like forces it to flip over.
I watched it a long time ago. I need to watch it again, just because it was just so awesomely absurd. I forget they use German tanks, or what did their school use?
The Owari girls, Owari, like the main school, it is a very, very kind of stock sports anime story of, you know, you got the various themed schools, like the ones for the Russians, ones for the Americans, British, and the Germans are at the end because apparently they had the best tanks, even though it's not really true. But they hobble together tanks from different countries, so it's like the main characters operate a Panzer IV. Is it like a Panzer IVe? Then like one of them has a Japanese tank. One of them has the M3 Lee. One of them has like, and I can't remember the other one.
The Lee's a meme tank. Japanese tanks are meme tanks. Let me bring up some Japanese heavy tanks. Japanese heavy tanks are like the biggest memes I've ever seen.
When you think about it, they didn't really need them very.
No, but they had like some. Let me see here. Japanese heavy tanks.
It does remind me because before I keep putting off playing because like with Hearts of Iron 4, like with these games you have to just like play them a lot and lose and screw up to learn how it all works and how to play a certain country. And I keep putting off doing it as Japan because I know down pat how to play them in Darkest Hour, and so I keep playing as them, and they are completely overpowered or ridiculous because you can basically, if you just like, and the only way you can kind of rationalize it is if they just went full military as early as possible. Ugh, that kind of looks like a Cromwell, actually. It looks like a Cromwell mated with a Churchill.
It's approximately 2 to 3 times the size of a Tiger II.
What? Did they actually build that?
No, they never built it. Like I said, it was a meme. For World of Tanks, because a lot of countries didn't like build heavy tanks, so they just had to like look up blueprints. So yeah, that's what. Yeah.
But yeah, so have you watched any anime? No, let's talk about movies before anime again. Let's give the weebism a bit of a break.
Mm-hmm.
But oh yeah, Cerberus. Yeah, my dad was on a business trip to San Diego, and he sent me a brochure of the USS Midway. That's cool. I hope you do well in the Navy when you join. But have you seen anything recently except from Star Wars?
Yeah, I just been too lazy to put up reviews. I saw Ford versus Ferrari, which I quite enjoyed. I saw 1917.
Oh, good. How did you like that?
I thought it was okay. I thought it was good,
Yeah.
but not great.
I keep wanting to bring my dad there because I actually really loved it. Even though I have a complaint that they basically made like 5% of the soldiers black, which in 1917, no.
Oh, when the Sikh like speaks better English and the company like sides with him over the white guy.
That part didn't really bother me because there were there were Indian units. And I'm fine with like suspending my disbelief because they generally just fought in their own units. They weren't mixed in with other British units. But the fact that like 5% of the British army in 1917 was like African, no.
Because I think there were actually Indian soldiers. I don't think the British
There were.
used black soldiers in Europe.
Well, I mean, in actual British divisions, also like the Britain and pretty much all of Europe prior to like the 1960s was 99% white.
Right, I think I think the Indians they brought in though were more for like digging ditches and like logistical support.
So I do have to say, like, since I have learned some actual history from Sabaton metal band, since I got their album The Great War, is I do have a fondness for. I want to look at more about Francis Pegamagapo, the Canadian First Nations sniper who killed 300 Germans and captured 300 more, and eventually became an activist. I'm like, okay, maybe I'd listen to a Native American, some activist, if they did something like that. If you're a national hero, maybe I'll listen to you. Otherwise, shut up.
That's a good album. I don't know if it's my favorite album from them. Last Stand might be my favorite album from them.
Yeah, the problem I have with The Great War, though, is that only one of the songs is specifically about the Central Powers. All the other ones are about the Allies or just war in general.
Oh, you mean the Red Baron?
Yeah, which I do love that one, but I like the harpsichord prelude to it.
I really like Verdun.
Mm-hmm. I also love Attack of the Dead Men.
Yeah, something I really hate, like, is the whole France surrendered in World War II thing.
Me too, because the thing is, it's a stereotype based off of one thing of, oh, they gave up when they lost the war.
Yeah, but they, like, didn't they lose, like, 1 million casualties? Like, they got their asses kicked. Like, it's not like they didn't fight. They literally got overrun and they lost Paris.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but also, like, it completely ignores all of French military history before then when, like, they lost so many men in World War One, and obviously, and we're considered, like, generally the history of Europe between 1648 and 1815 is basically every war is, oh god, we have to prevent France from taking over the whole continent.
Well, France's population was higher than Germany's, I think, until pretty much the turn of the century.
Yeah, it was, and then eventually Germany's birth rate exploded in like the late 1800s.
And France, I think, in part because of secularization, their birth rate just collapsed.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the French took 2,200,000 casualties. Most of those being prisoners. But they just, like, lost, and I think they overran Paris. And then they capitulated after they had lost the war. So I don't think it's really fair to say that.
Yeah, Rooster God mentions that Indian troops fought in World War One. Ernst Jünger mentions them fighting in Storm of Steel. Yeah, that's a book I recently got. It's and it's specifically the Mystery Girl Publishing, which is like a right-wing publishing company, and it's awesome. I published an original edition of, or it's like the most faithful adaptation. It's the original 1929 English translation of Singer's Storm of Steel, and it's really good so far. The only problem is that there's a few too many typos for my taste. They could have at least gone through it one more time. But it is nice, like, reading it, because I remember reading All Quiet on the Western Front and seeing the 1979 movie with Richard Thomas and
I thought that was a really good book, actually.
Which one?
All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah, but it feels like Storm of Steel is kind of it's almost like you could see it as a rebuttal to it, where it's Ernst Jünger basically saying, like, he wants the huge, heavy fighting. He doesn't want to just be stuck in the trench doing nothing.
Like, the sacrifices the French made in World War I think we just don't appreciate. Because if you look at the casualty lists for battles, they'll lose more men than the Germans, despite their population being smaller.
Yeah.
And France just had to endure horrific sacrifices.
the thing is, like, the Germans, I think at some point in 1917, the Germans actually almost could have just won the war then, because there was a huge amount of French the French were on the verge of completely mutinying because they had lost so many soldiers. It's just the Germans didn't really capitalize it.
Yeah, and the Spring Offensive was a shit show. Was there a song about the Spring Offensive? I don't think there was.
No, and I would have really loved it. Like, they could have just called it Storm of Steel, and like, because the Germans came at almost as close to Paris as they did in right after the war started in 1914 with the Mike. I think it was also called the Michael Offensive.
Operation Michael.
Was that named after Saint Michael the Archangel?
It might have been. It was like a subpart. The Spring Offensive just had no goal, which is the issue with a lot of German military operations that fell.
What is basically just the Americans are pouring in. We finally got all our troops from the Eastern Front. Fuck it.
Yeah, like there was no particular goal, which was one of the big issues and why it failed. The Allies still took higher casualties, but the casualties didn't really matter because America was showing up.
The United States, we lost 110,000 men, even though we were in the war, actively in the war. Like, American troops didn't really arrive en masse into France until, early 1918. And we lost over 110,000 men just in a short period of time.
France took 1,400,000 casualties. Actually, Britain was fighting on two other fronts that the French weren't really fighting on. In the Middle East.
Their Lawrence of Arabia song. What's it called?
Seven Pillars of
Wisdom. That one is really good too.
It's a bit of a meme how big the Arab revolt was.
Yeah.
Because the Arabs were actually traditionally very loyal to the Ottomans. Because it was kind of like a sleepy backwater province. Like, they kind of let the Arabs alone because it was such a huge prestige thing to control Baghdad and Medina. The Ottoman Empire had a very small population. Let me see what it was. I think it was like 18 million.
The thing I actually find, like, people, like, one meme it's not a meme, it's a false historical understanding that Kaiser Wilhelm had a bad foreign policy and that he was, like, too bellicose. I think it's wrong on both accounts because, okay, here's what I would say is, Kaiser Wilhelm managed to get Bulgarians and Austrians to fight on the same side as Turks. You can't tell me that the person who figured that out is bad at diplomacy.
Okay, so the Ottoman population prior to World War I was 18 million, which is nothing when you consider how much territory they had. I actually think the Ottoman army did a really good job relative to this, like, their population and how underdeveloped they were.
The general idea of the Central Powers was it just wasn't quite enough. The Germans almost won the war because they won half of the war. They managed to beat Russia. Like, you can't look at the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk and see it as anything less than a complete victory on the German side of taking basically all territory that wasn't just Russia proper.
The Italian campaign was a shit show. I think if I recall, the Austrians were actually advancing, and they just kind of collapsed for other reasons. But they had curb stomped the Italians.
Same thing happened in the 7 Weeks War in 1866, in which I think it was Joseph Radetzky von Radetz, who the Radetzky March is named after, curb stomped the Italians. And same thing with Admiral Wilhelm von Tegethoff. He had one of Austria's first ironclads and basically said, we're doing it with our ironclad, we're going to ram Italian ships with it, and it worked. They would have won that war. They would have completely destroyed the Italians if it wasn't for the Germans forcing the peace on them.
Well, Italy's army just in both world wars.
What yeah, apparently I read there was a point said that Italian anti-aircraft fire never managed to down a single Allied plane. But the thing is, it was kind of similar to the Russian army. in that the individual soldiers themselves were quite capable and brave. It's just, and their equipment wasn't really that bad. It's just that it seems like one of the most important aspects of warfare is your commanders, is your officers, and that's one of the reasons why Prussia/Germany did so well compared to the odds, compared to the sheer numbers they were fighting against, is because their officer corps was second to none. In fact, most of the Ottomans' military in World War One was run by German officers.
The the Italian army had very few NCOs. Like I think they had like the lowest number of any party. The Japanese are a bit of a meme in World War II. I don't think they performed particularly well. Well, the issue is Japan was a meme country and a LARP country, so they thought that they could attack. Actually, tomorrow I have a video coming out where I'm going to be talking about Japanese politics in the 1920s and 30s. But they like literally thought they could invade everywhere in East Asia at the same time, and it would somehow work out.
That's why when I play Darkest Hour that's why I think Darkest Hour is kind of ridiculous, because as Japan, I declare war on China, early summer of 1937, and I can take them down in about 10 months, completely overwhelm and annihilate the Chinese.
Yeah, the Japanese army promised the emperor that they would defeat China within like 4 weeks.
Yeah, no. That reminds me of because I know that from there's a really good documentary called Japan, or it's like something like World War II Japan in color, and it's a really good, fascinating documentary, and it's why there's such a difference when you see old film in color, because it makes a massive difference. It's why I can only half like World War One in color, because it is amazing to see this. It feels much more real when you're seeing even this very old kind of degraded film in color. But the kind of disgusting thing at the end of it is like it basically says all of the loss and all the sacrifice was actually worth it, because liberalism needed to stop Imperial Germany. And like I keep hearing that, and like that's really kind of disgusting, because it's basically saying you can sacrifice entire generations of men just so long as neoliberalism manages.
No, it's the fucking democratic peace theory. Imperial Germany was a democracy. I'm pretty sure, didn't the Social Democrats even have a majority? I think they did.
They won their largest share of votes in the 1913 election. But yeah, Imperial Germany had universal male suffrage since 1871, albeit it was a weighted suffrage, so that aristocrats had more of a vote. And of course, I wish they just didn't have that. I would have just been fine with. I mean, I like the idea of the Holy Roman Empire for a country as big as Germany.
Yeah, the Social Democrats, I don't know if they formed government, but they won the most seats in that election. So it's like, it wasn't even like a fake, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't even a fake democracy, because the anti-monarchist party won, and they were allowed to win.
I think my belief is that it's not that Germany was too bellicose leading up to World War One. It's that they weren't aggressive enough, because they had much better opportunities to just curb stomp everyone and get a hegemony in Europe and never have to worry about a two-front war ever again. Because like, imagine in 1905, when Russia was on the verge of collapse because of the war against Japan, if Germany just made up any excuse and says, we want to free Poland, fuck it, we're at war with Russia. What are the Russians gonna do?
One of the funniest things about about Germany once it became a country is, despite being anti-Catholic, because Catholics were such a large percentage of the population and they voted as a bloc, the Center Party was always like the second or third largest, the first or second largest party.
Yeah, I think Bismarck was obviously brilliant in a lot of ways, but that he didn't understand you can't just completely oppress or try and suppress 40% of your population.
Was it 40% Catholic?
The Imperial Germany was like roughly, it was like 60% Protestant, 39% Catholic, 1% Jewish.
Right.
But even then, like it does make me like there's pictures of like Jews, like a lot of German Jews fought very bravely in World War I and weren't traitors. I think specifically the people that actually tried to bring down the German government, like people like Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, they were specifically like Russian Jews in the Russian Empire or like Russian Poland that escaped because Germany was far more tolerant to the Jews than Imperial Russia was. And it kind of makes me even more angry because it's like this is how they repay the country that welcomed
No,
them.
it's like a thing. Like every if you look at the people, the regimes and the people who tried to help them, like was it Pius the 12th during World War II?
Pius, no, yeah, it was Pius the
And then
12th.
they wrote Hitler's Pope and they smear the crap out of him.
Even though he didn't, he specifically said, "I don't like the Nazis."
No, he helped a bunch of Jews too, but
Oh,
they
okay.
smear him. They smear like Franco. They smear like
That's something I would be very curious to ask, like your normie Charlie Kirk-esque conservative about is who would you have supported in the Spanish Civil War? Because it's like on the one hand, it's like, well, the like it would make their head explode because on the one hand you have both sides are basically in favor of like are against capitalism, but of course like the Republicans were like hyper secularists and like bombed churches and like raped
no. The
nuns.
Red Terror killed. Let me look it up. The number
Though,
of people they
to be
killed.
fair, I think more people died under the hands of the nationalists than the Republicans. But like the Republicans were socialist scum. But like the whole Dinesh D'Souza argument that like all fascists are actually just leftist socialists. I'm like, do you know who Francisco Franco is?
Although the irony is, Franco with Spain, at least initially, was one of the most socialist countries in history in terms of the classical definition of worker control of the means of production. Like there was a lot of cooperatives, there was a lot of workplace democracy um, compared to a lot of stuff. Let's see here.
But I can't believe this. Like when I was a normie Republican, like in my teens, I liked Glenn Beck a lot, and I'm just like him saying like on like we shouldn't ban porn, or like him saying like Teddy Roosevelt was a horrible, awful person. You know, I think he was probably one of our most base presidents.
Why does he hate Teddy Rose? Oh, because he
Be, be,
expanded the size of government.
because he wanted safety regulations in place.
No, Teddy Roosevelt was A, he was a Chad. B, he was like a nationalist, and
It's because he headed one of America's first progressive party, but of course the progressive party in like 1914 was eugenics. We hate black people and we want women's suffrage. I think part of the original reasons for women's suffrage was so that like Southern white women were terrified of blacks getting the vote because it would have meant that like they would be able to vote out white people. So they wanted like to double the size of the white vote.
in a lot of cases, I'm not sure how many countries it was, but in the case of Argentina and some countries, female suffrage was imposed by fascist governments because women overwhelmingly like fascism. They like having like a daddy state. They also
Mm-hmm.
like being led by like people who aren't massive figs and who are kind of masculine. I have to say
Even
fig
though
because there's a word I'd like to say, but I can't say it on YouTube.
mhm. Even though like the Nazis were like a very bizarre, like really did not resemble much of the Aryan master race. Hitler being this weird. I know Hitler had blue eyes, but like him, Goering, and Goebbels do not look like your example of the master race. But anyways,
Oh, sorry. Just another
yeah,
thing about Franco is after World War One. Sorry, after the Civil War, he got rid of most of the LARPers because he like, yeah, we're gonna send the like hardcore like Natsocks and shit. We're gonna send them as a volunteer division, which I think was actually the best performing division of any
yeah,
country of
the
World War
blue
Two.
division.
Yeah, but it was a way for him to like get rid of like the really radical people. And largely, he just governed as like a conservative pragmatist. Like,
I think that might
yeah.
have been the problem. Like, I think he imagined that after he died, like he understood, like, I'm just gonna let Juan Carlos become king, and he'll continue my legacy. And then it completely fell apart, and Juan Carlos was a complete,
See,
cuck.
I don't know how much of his fault that was, and how much just there wasn't anything he could do in this situation.
Well, I need to know this more about what late Francoist Spain was like, because I don't know. Was there still huge support for Franco in 1975?
I'm not sure. It was interesting though because they had reversed and they had embraced like more liberal economic policies, and that's what led to the Spanish miracle.
I'll be right back. I just have to.
Sure. Let's see here. TR is actually. Let's see what people are saying in the chat. Pinocchio is a fan of Franco. Yeah. Let's see here. It was funny. I think there was a debate among like the SS and some of the LARPers as to whether red hair or blonde hair was more Aryan. Which is an interesting question. I don't know. I like both of them. I just like most Europeans. Most Europeans I just like in general. I think the best looking people in Europe though are probably the Italians. Particularly like the North I maintain that North Italians are the master race. Oh, by the way, my buddy Serp is just posting in the chat. He's doing a playthrough of Metro 2033, which I'm actually finding really interesting. So I'm just going to post a link to that.
Really good game. Really good game.
I
actually I started streaming myself. Well, the first game I streamed was Sunless Sea, which was okay, but I streamed all of Kathy Rain, which was a free. It was a game I got for free months ago, but I never had a real good excuse to play it. Like detective point-and-click adventure game that came out, and it's possibly one of the worst things I've ever played in my life. Because the music is good and the art style is kind of nice, but like the protagonist is so bad. Because it's basically set in the 90s. It's set in the 90s, and you're this 20-something female woke journalism student who has dyed hair and big earrings and everything. And you're investigating, like, right after your grandfather dies, like, you're investigating some weird stuff happened to him, and you're, like, discussing, and you're, like, uncovering this paranormal stuff about this town. But she's like, even if I was a leftist, I think I'd be offended, because she's so deliberate. She's a caricature of it. It's like, your best friend is, like, an evangelical Christian, so you look at a cross on her wall, and she's like, I'm fine with that, as long as they don't shove it in my face. And it's like, at some point, it shows like a flashback where she's like in a clinic and she wants to get an abortion. And towards the end of the game, it shows like her confronting her unborn child and her coming to the conclusion, even though you were an actual life, it was still the right thing to do to murder you. And she's just like rude and horrible the entire game. And then the ghost of her grandfather basically says, Kathy, I'm so proud of you. You're a wonderful person. I'm like, what? Really? It sucks. It's so bad.
Oh, sorry. Someone in the chat says, Akira Joker says, Norman Master Race. Norman Master Race representing.
Hell yeah. I can trace my ancestry directly to not William the Conqueror himself, but people that went along with him.
Yeah, one of my ancestors was a baron. No, but the Normans were based. They were fucking Christian Vikings, and they were just a race of Chads.
The only thing I don't know if it's that true is the idea that they basically erased this very rich Anglo-Saxon culture that was in England at the time. But the thing is, after that, we got like Chaucer and Shakespeare. So
like what happened with that? So I read a book, like a biography of William the Conqueror. So what William the Conqueror did was he was actually fairly benevolent initially, and he didn't really revoke that many titles. but you had a series of Anglo-Saxon lords revolting or plotting against him, and as time went on, it just wound up that he revoked all the titles of the various.
And then he probably gave them to people like my ancestor.
Yeah, to Normans.
I would love to visit where it's like this nice small area in West Sussex. That's where. And they also apparently fought in the 100 Years' War, which I know on Twitter a lot of people are like, I know recently are on like a binge of loving Joan of Arc and the French. And I'm like, I can't do that because my ancestors fought for. I remember the reason why our family crest has a castle on it is because one of them seized a French castle and the king granted him. Let it, like, in memory of that, let him have a castle on his coat of arms, which is awesome.
I mean, I like the French. I meme a bit about hating them, but I really like France.
I do like the fact that basically, all the kings of England have never actually been English. They were Norman, and then they were French, and then after the War of the Roses, the Tudors were Welsh, and then they were Scottish, and then they were basically just Germans.
I really like James the First, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Is James which one was murdered by Cromwell?
I think that was Charles II.
Yeah. No, I think it was Charles the First.
Or was it Charles I get them mixed up, to be honest.
Charles the First was the one that wanted to make England Catholic again.
I liked King James. He was Protestant, but more or less what wound up happening under James is he just was like, okay, I don't really mind Catholics. You just have to take an oath that the Pope doesn't have the authority to depose me, which seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Fritz Serp wants to come on. Do you mind if he?
Yeah, that's fine. No, I don't mind
Okay,
at all.
sure. Come on. Okay.
Oh, I also want to say, thanks for hosting the stream. I would have done it, but I'm lazy.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
I also just didn't want to clutter up my video feed with streams.
Mm-hmm.
But I am happy to the people that my next stream on Twitch is going to be basically. I've calculated it. It's possibly the complete and polar opposite in every way possible of Kathy Rain.
Yeah, sorry, I don't stream that much, so I didn't really know what I was doing.
Oh, did you, sorry, so is it, did you
It's uploaded on my channel, I'm just trying to, so there's like this, 20-minute lag before it becomes a video on your channel, and you can't really, look and see what it did for, 20 minutes. It's up now. I'm just trying to edit it, so...
Yeah, I'm just really interested in seeing what you have to say about it, just because it's Russian.
So far, I find it really good. I like the open.
Have you read the book at all?
No, everybody's telling me I need to read the book.
The book is I mean, it makes sense. It's much slower. It's not really action based, but I do like at one point in the book, Artyom he has to work for the Hansa League, which is this series of trading cities in the subway tunnels, and they literally make him dig manure, and eventually he gets lost and he runs into the arms of just these genuine Christians, these Christian monks, and the book just basically talks about we just want to spread the love of Jesus Christ, and it's completely sincere, and it kind of just lets you make the judgment on that. And then the next chapter is Artyom getting caught into the cult of the worm, where all these children worship this giant worm creature that they.
Oh yeah, the cult of the worm.
I wish that was in the game.
I thought it was.
Audible?
Yeah, it's on Audible.
It's not.
Okay,
I have it on Audible.
So at work, there's maybe 10 hours a week because it varies what's going on at work. I can listen to Audible, I listened 12 hours last week. So I'm listening through the Gothic Knob of the month right now. So I might listen to that. I've been wanting to listen through Flowers and
Yeah, but Metro 2033 is
Is that on my end, or did you hit a like a fucking giant guitar. Or something.
Oh,
Argent
no,
was practicing drumming.
I was just playing with the because I have a mic boom, and I was just playing with the spring on it.
Okay. I'm sure my audio is straight up shit right now.
But Fritz, did you play Metro Exodus?
I have not, because from what I've seen, it doesn't take place predominantly in the tunnels. and I don't-
It's really good. I think it's the
when
best.
it's on
of the
sale.
three.
Because I'm really trying to not spend as much money on games. That was one of my resolutions, is to like only spend like just around $100 on games every year.
Because
But
I found Anna really annoying in Last Light.
Last Light, I feel like, has a much worse story but more fun gameplay, because it turns into fucking E.T., where you have to babysit this stupid little mutant. Where I'm like, well, in the first game, I had.
We'll try to avoid spoilers, just because what's his name is playing through it. But Anna turns into like best girl in the third game. It's interesting because her and Artyom are. Well, I guess it's a minors, but who cares? This one's not that important. Are married, and she's just very affectionate towards him because Artyom is a Chad.
I did like his voice in the first game rather than the second one, though. He's done a little more younger and a little more kind of like how I imagine him, a little more kind of uncertain.
Miller, I love Miller.
I do like how there's just a character called Uncle Bourbon. That's great.
Miller's a Chad, especially like even after he gets his like legs blowed off, he's still a Chad. He just doesn't give a fuck.
I also love how the first game. I guess the second. No, my favorite character was Khan, just kind of weird mystic. I always liked Khan.
I have a quote from him in No Chance actually, where he talks about how Heaven, Hell, and Purgatory were destroyed by the bombs, and now all the dead just stay in the metro.
I also like in one of the scenes. I don't know if Serp's gotten to it yet. The one where you're the front line, the battle one, and like you're on the communist train and like.
No, I don't think he's gotten. Well, just.
I was only like an hour and a half in.
Okay.
And I'm really bad at video games.
Did you make it to the part where
I went outside the first time, and that's the level I cut off.
Oh, did you get to what I called the fail fest?
What do you mean by the fail test?
Where you get attacked by like a fuck ton of guys.
Oh yeah.
Did you die a couple times there?
Where you get attacked by in the sewer before they let you into the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people were like yelling at me in the chat, calling me a retard and stuff.
That part's legit hard.
What, when you're outside the first time, or?
I didn't know that I was supposed to go outside, so I just kind of walked around the market for like 5 minutes, like asking the chat to help me, and nobody was helping me. So I said I was just gonna end it, and then I accidentally bumped into like the walk outside part, and then I played through that level. And then I got to the end of that level, and then like there wasn't that many people left in, so I just ended it. I think I'll probably try and play through the whole thing.
One thing that when you go outside for the first time with Bourbon and you get separated, it's like I hate it.
I got killed by that bad thing a whole bunch.
Oh, the demon? Yeah.
Demons. Bitch.
I'm not sure. I think they're based off of tigers.
Yeah, that's kind of the fun thing of trying to figure out what all of them are based on, are derived from, because I know the Solaces are mutants of pigs, but like the dark ones are the ones that are mutants of humans, and that's kind of that's the most interesting thing. Like, this is the next step in human evolution. They look like the aliens from XCOM.
My favorite thing in the whole game is if it's hostile, you shoot it, because like
it's the most baseline ever.
No, I know. It's just liberals don't understand that. Like, they're just incapable of understanding.
There's a line Anna gives in the second game. I'm not going to give away. That is also really based. That's kind of making fun of that of liberal attitudes towards that. But yeah, the first time you go outside, like, even though I love it and I hate it at the same time, because like you really feel like you don't belong and you just don't want to be up there anymore. That's kind of the point. Is it showing how like as bad as the underground tunnels in the metro are, at least it's not the surface where you feel like an alien.
Okay, actually, they don't know what demons are. I think demons are a chimera of a bat and a tiger, is my guess.
I also learned that Glukovsky, the author of the books, is kind of a Renaissance man where he speaks like 5 languages. Which is pretty cool. Because I just imagine like him just walking around the subway for hours on end, just like writing notes down.
Don't feel bad, Serp, if you get the bad ending, because I've never gotten the good ending in any Metro game.
I've always gotten one ending, and I don't know which one it is.
I always get the bad ending, because like you aren't supposed to really kill people for the good ending, but there's no non-lethal ways.
I do like how they don't treat Nazis in the game as just there's no way other than killing them, because that's one of the kind of scary things. Like I remember I watched the, E3 this year, and they're like advertising the new Wolfenstein game, which I guess takes place in the 80s. And the Nazi regime is still around, and it, like the developers, you could kind of like hear them seething, like you could kill the evil Nazi scum. Like they're afraid that it's like real, because obviously Donald Trump is president, and Donald Trump is Hitler. But it's like, of course, if you believe everybody that disagrees, and they basically have this idea that if you're a Nazi or anything like that, it's perfectly, you have carte blanche to just murder all of them. It's like that's not a good combination.
Like I got the bad ending in Exodus because like you're not supposed. There's parts of the game where you're not supposed to kill people who are shooting you, and that just irritated me. Because no, there was non-lethal ways in Exodus. They introduced it. Actually, Exodus is cool because they introduced CQC. So like if you're close to someone, you can like kill them or knock them out by pressing a button, and you auto do it. So like close range combat is actually good in the third game. There's something I find funny in just all of these like post-Soviet games, that it's so far from when the Soviet Union was a thing. Like the characters who would be around to remember it should be way older than they are. Like it's very obvious that Miller was a Spetsnaz, but like that was 40 years prior. No, that would have had to been what, like 33. Yeah, 43 years prior to it, he would have had to been a Spetsnaz, so he should be like 90 years old or something. But I don't think Colonel Miller's shown up yet. But he was a Spetsnaz, and he references the Soviet Union a couple of times.
Yeah, he's like, they don't make this Soviet architecture anymore at Yom.
This place has a Soviet soul, although I think you're too young to understand what that means.
Mm-hmm. But, what I was gonna say is, yeah, I want to say, like, have you seen any, what was the most recent anime you've seen?
I'm trying to watch through Hetalia, Axis Powers, and Slayers at the same time.
That was Hetalia was technically the first anime I've ever watched outside of Yoga.
How do you feel about Hetalia? I actually liked Hetalia.
I think it's stupid and I get what it is, but it feels kind of just silly. But like the only reason I watched it because it was like when I first found what DeviantArt was at 15, and like I was trying to date this girl who was like a total weeb, and like I tried to watch it just to impress her. But I'm like, wait, this is shit. Or I didn't like it very much, so I just like I'm off. And then I realized that she was completely insane. Like she would come to school cosplaying as characters. I'm like, yeah, no thanks. I also realized since it's like your first crush or something, it's like, wait, she's not very attractive in the slightest.
I'm gonna say this now: Hungary is best girl.
How many females are in it? Cause
she's like, there's very few.
Isn't it like a lot of yaoi bait thing?
I like when France and Britain fight. Is really fun. I like there's one episode where it's like I just want to punch France in the balls, And it's like every war France has been involved with. And it's like France versus Prussia, Austria, and Britain. France versus Russia, Italy, and Britain.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the first actual anime I saw was Cowboy Bebop, which was nice. And then after that, I saw Girls in Panzer, and then then it was Magi Labyrinth of Magic, which I'm not really a fan of. But then the manga that I first read was One Piece, and I kind of want to sell all my copies of One Piece now because I can't take it anymore. Because I also realized that Eiichiro Oda is a complete shit lib.
It's funny because Hungary and Austria like used to be married, and
I've heard about it that in one of them in one of them that takes place after the World War II, Prussia just plays the role of East Germany.
yeah, Prussia's a massive dick. Is kind of like his.
Mm-hmm.
He's a huge dick.
I don't think I've ever really got. I don't think I could get into. I don't know what it is, but some of the ones that are like here's like anthropomorphized countries or whatever, like that and Cancal Azerlane, where you have girls that are basically representing battleships. Even for me, it's a little too weird.
I think that I like it. I think it's pretty good. It's just that it's better in small doses.
Well,
if you're
that's
trying to watch it for like an hour or something, it kind of gets tedious because there's no story.
You know what was surprisingly
It's
kind
just
of
like 1 minute skit after 1 minute skit kind of gets not boring, but kind of like I don't. It's better in short doses.
I like
Kind of like
Russia a lot.
Mm-hmm. It's for me, yes, sir. Though on your, that's kind of how I feel about like a lot of comedy animes, like Cromartie High School or Nishijo or whatever it's called. The one with the deer, I think that one is really, really funny, but you just can't watch it all at once. But you know what I've actually has become one of my new favorite anime is Devil is a Part-Timer. I think that one is kind of brilliant, and somebody described it as it's like a reverse isekai. And that's kind of what I like. I hate the isekai genre. I hate the idea of it's where it's like people like from from the modern normal world transported into an RPG or a fantasy world, but they just immediately drop all of that and they just become generic fantasy heroes. I like the other way around. And Devil is a part-timer is absolutely brilliant. I love that so much. Have either of you seen it?
No.
No, sorry.
I also saw. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I love with Russia and Hetalia how Belarus is obsessed with becoming one with him, and she's like a yandere towards him.
Lukashenko's kind of based, isn't he?
No, he's super based.
Mm-hmm.
And Ukraine is a crybaby with giant boobs in Hetalia.
Speaking of which, I love how quickly they made what's her name, the prosecutor in Crimea. What was her name? How quickly she became like a waifu meme. But what else? I also saw I had a whole bunch of days off, or I was just by myself. I watched all of High School of the Dead, and I'm like, what?
Do you guys have consoles?
No. Oh, I have a Switch.
Okay, so this guy just said in the chat, like, the truth. The GameStop 4 for $20 sales are actually amazing. That's where I have almost all my PlayStation 4 games.
Yeah, they don't really have them for Switch yet.
Oh, well, there's like no games for Switch, really.
Yeah.
Natalia Poklonskaya, that's who it is. But I can't believe I just on chat said, I watched High School of the Dead, and I'm like, the first few episodes, I'm like, what's the big deal? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, everyone who made this is going to hell.
Yes, I read a Yankee in King Arthur's Court. In retrospect, I guess it was kind of paused, but I enjoyed it.
What's pause mean? What is it?
It's paused as in HIV positive.
Oh, so it's liberal.
Yeah, it's like figure. It basically is the same thing as like woke in a left wing context, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Although
Sorry.
I use woke as a synonym for based, so
The only console I have is my 3DS, and the only game I play on it is Animal Crossing. That's like the most oddball of the games I like, is I really like it. And I feel bad, and I really don't understand why they keep flipping between console and handheld, because it is clearly the game best played on a handheld. Because it's like the first game GameCube, the second game Wild World was on DS, third game City Folk was on Wii, and then New Leaf is on DS, and now the new one's going to be on the Switch. Like, make up your mind and make it a handheld. So of course the Switch is a handheld, so. So to me, saying that I like Animal Crossing side of the stream, was that controversial?
no, it's not that controversial. Let me see what's coming out. Let me see if there's any like.
The only game I know that's coming out that I'm somewhat interested in is Elden Ring, and even though I think Sekiro is a really really good game, I still haven't finished it.
It looks too hard for me, to be honest.
Yeah, it is, but it's an example of how, not to plug my own video, but I'm plugging my own video. Is my video on the fantasy genre and why I think almost every attempt after Tolkien and Lewis failed. Is that like Sekiro is basically how fantasy should be done, where it is set in a historical period. It's just like, what if Japanese mythology was real? And like, that's really interesting. As opposed to like Dark Souls, where it's just we're taking random shit we kind of understand from Western religion and making it whatever we want.
Right. Anyways, let's see. We've been going on for about an hour and a half. I might wrap it up if that's okay with you guys. My voice is starting to get a bit tired. All
right. I mean, I'm still good to go, but is there anything else you want to talk about?
Not particularly. Serp, did you have anything?
Oh, yeah, I really like that game. I'm kind of like on the fence whether I should do like a let's play or I should just do one video so far.
Of Sekiro?
No, of Metro.
I mean, if you do it, I'll probably watch it.
I mean, it got 100 views. So.
Oh, I have a question. Argent, I still don't really understand your obsession with Darkside Phil, wherein if you really wanted clicks, you got to talk about Chris Chan more. Because, like, there's this channel that had no views or anything. He started talking about Chris Chan, and he got to, like, 40,000.
No, I've got so many views on my Chris. It's just kind of really depressing. And if I wanted to do that, I just have to do a fuck ton of research.
I mean, yeah, because right now, like, his latest thing is he's e-begging again for, he wants Pokemon Sword, even though he already has the other one. Even though, like, his mom is, people think his mom is already dead, because the last picture he posted of her, she looks like she's dead. He has all these, like, court cases pending for people trying to, like, settle his debts, even though I think he keeps getting away with it because, like, he doesn't have any assets, because he doesn't own anything that's worth.
And they mortgaged the house.
Also, like, nobody would
They own a house?
They did, but it was mortgaged.
Also, like, who would want to buy his house anyway? Because, like, the lawn is completely unkempt, and inside is just.
I thought the house burned down and they lived in.
They rebuilt it.
They rebuilt it with the insurance money.
Oh.
And then because they don't cut their grass because Chris is too lazy to mow his own lawn, and like there's animal feces everywhere in the house and mold and all this garbage piling up. So like nobody would want to buy a house or want to deal with it. That's why I feel like if I was a smart troll, I would basically just try and get Chris to sign a will so that I could have all of his crap. because he's got to have like a whole bunch of video game stuff that might be what people might want to own. But
His father was actually fairly successful.
the only thing is, like, I heard is like his dad like helped make he made the machines that help make plastic bottles. So I'm like, oh, so you're responsible for helping pollute the planet with tons of garbage.
Yeah, his father worked for Western Electric for 40 years, and he designed a bunch of stuff. Okay, he has at least 7 patents.
My grandfather actually, this was like, it was only declassified like 10 or 12 years ago when I was in high school. He worked for, so I live near Rochester, New York, which is famous for Kodak and film. My grandfather worked for Kodak and actually in like the 50s and 60s helped develop spy satellites for Kodak to spy on the Russians. Awesome. Like, one of my plan is like my great aunt and uncle and my grandparents, like, they're still completely lucid, but in their 80s. But like, my plan is like for their funerals or for posterity's sake, I want to like have a nice like solid interview with them, just so like they can share their thoughts about their lives. And I think like that's because like that's the best way I think I can honor them.
Sometime I have to watch Cole Smithy's channel.
Who?
Chris Chan's brother-in-law.
It
Yeah,
has less subscribers than I do. I think it's in like the hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
He has 152.
Mm-hmm. But like, I don't know how. The thing I'm just fascinated by the fact that Chris Chan is still alive, and the fact that like it's like he has some sort of bizarre protection that like it lets him continue to be in the even into his late 30s, because he's almost 38, and like he's like a lot of the interesting stuff is only happening recently. It's because like he of course now believes in the dimensional merge, in which he believes all of his creations and all like the creations of the family.
The Idea Guy saga, I'd have to do like raw research into readings, like actual like chat stuff. The Idea Guy saga is the most interesting saga by far. But what ended up happening is that a lot of the Chris Chan watchers like intervened and stopped the saga because they didn't want Chris Chan to become more racist again.
That's one of the funniest things. Is like I read the interviews like with people that were with him in the game place. Oh, he also got banned. He also recently got banned from another store that was in Charlottesville because he was creepy and like kept yelling or something. And like Chris Chan is now like really into D&D, and like he like recently tweeted that he wants them to. He's like demanding that on Twitter that they unban him because he thinks they're the only people that can teach him D&D. I'm just like imagining how can you imagine somebody trying to play a D&D game with Chris? Because like he showed his character sheet and his character can like run absurdly fast, unreasonably fast. Because like can you imagine like Chris losing a dice roll in a battle or something? Like he would flip out because he doesn't understand the concept of not winning. And I think that's the thing I've heard is like Chris, sadly, like because what Chris obviously needs right now is to go to a mental hospital where he's in a much more healthy, safe location and he can't hurt anybody anymore, but he's not going to.
Argent has talked about this a lot with Chris Chan, is that there's this like narrow window where people they're crazy enough to be institutionalized, but they can function enough that they aren't.
Yeah, that's how he's gotten out of jail, because he's too insane, and like the debt collectors aren't like, they don't want to be the people, they don't. It's not going to look good on their their profile if it's like, oh, local debt collectors or bank, kick old woman and her autistic son out of their house. But like, Chris Chan is not a good person. But in any case, like,
I think the trolls are worse though.
Some of them are like, I kind of like, everyone likes liquid, but who you have to be a weirdo to pretend to be a disgusting autistic person. But when I try and think, because he's the one person that makes me question the the old phrase "God don't make no junk," because it's like most people, even if they're very autistic, like they have something they're really good at. Because you can be like have no social skills whatsoever, but like what if you're like really, really, really good at programming? Chris is good at nothing. He has no skills whatsoever.
Uh,
Can you name anything
the
he's good
guy's
at?
38 and he hasn't worked a day in his life.
He apparently briefly worked at a fast food place.
He
worked at a
apparently
Wendy's.
worked in Wendy's.
He worked at a
for
Wendy's
few
and then
weeks.
got fired because he made a scary Donald Duck impression and scared a small child. But yeah, it's been 10 years, like over 10 years since he applied for a job. But I think the good that comes out of
Let's
it.
put it like this. Think about how big Argent's channel was if he could, like, you would have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Like, he is like one of the most successful internet personalities.
Chris
He's
Chan?
Well,
maintained, he's
Chris
maintained
is
constant attention.
Chris
I mean,
Chris
I
Channel
really
has,
like
like,
somebody
30
like the Angry Video Game Nerd, but even I would say a lot of his content is still really good, but you kind of peaked in terms of like when you're on the internet, you're gonna peak in popularity.
Chris Chan has kind of gone in the valley in the sense that like after his dad died, so between like 2011 and 2016, he kind of dipped. And it's only now that like with the whole dimensional merge stuff that it's actually interesting. But I mean, the thing is like what's bizarre. What I'm trying to say is that just because there's a lot of people I've seen that like that are actually I think good guys in all of this, and that they're genuinely concerned for Chris's well-being. And like a lot of them like said like they have this plan that as soon as Barb dies, they want to like swoop in and rescue Chris and like have him live in like a halfway home or like a place where he can get help, so he doesn't have to live on the street. But they said like they just couldn't deal with it because he kept talking about the dimensional merge all the time.
Sorry, what's the
'Cause, like,
dimensional merge?
The
It's
dimensional
a
merge.
consequence of the Idea Guy saga that's gotten stronger and stronger over time, where Chris thinks that that the dimensions between his comic book and reality are merging. So he'll actively talk to Sonichu and stuff now, like he's a real person.
Okay. Makes sense to me.
That's what the idea guy started. Is he would call Chris on the phone and he would try to convince him of stuff like that Rosachu was like was at a banned GameStop. So we would call Chris and tell Chris on the phone, Rosachu is at this GameStop you got kicked out of. So we would go there in person. But at the same time, he was trying to make Chris racist again.
Mm-hmm.
So then the fan base or some of the followers of Chris intervened and doxed the guy for making Chris racist again. But what ended up happening is Chris just got even crazier. Even though that the Idea Guy saga ended.
He also now believes he's a literal goddess because he got really into Hyperdimension Neptunia, which I guess in that like the characters are like goddesses of certain consoles. So he believes he's a goddess of the Commodore 64, which I don't believe for a second he's ever actually played. And so it's basically the same that's been going on. He's still e-begging and everything, but now he thinks he's a goddess. Like and like he, and a good way to explain is that deep down he knows that his life he can't continue this forever. That once his mom dies, eventually like he's gonna have to get kicked out of his house. So he feels like if he just believes hard enough, if he just believes that he's a goddess and that the Sonichu world, he also believes that that dimension contains everybody's original characters and all of the all like fictional universes like Family Guy and a lot of anime and Pokemon. If he believes hard enough, he believes that it will come true. But what's funny is he believes that like bad people will not make it through. Like Chris notoriously really hates Donald Trump and has like at numerous times called for people to kill him. And it's largely because like he is like the people he's voted for, since he voted for both George Bush and Barack Obama, it's because he felt like he didn't like them personally, and so when he liked Hillary Clinton personally, the fact that she didn't win, he is probably why he hates Donald Trump more than anything else. I don't think he's going to kill himself, Korux. It's because Chris doesn't really understand what death is, or he has said on Twitter that he believes since he's the goddess, he'll live forever. He doesn't think he's going to die.
You have to understand is if somebody has autism and that they don't have social interaction for 20 years on end, their disassociation is going to go so severe that they'll become as schizoid as a extreme schizophrenic.
One of the channels that documents him recently, it's Gibby, Gibi, I think is pretty good. He just documents what he's been doing recently. He made this argument a year ago that Chris might have a tulpa, and a tulpa is this theory that, like, if you imagine some sort of alternate personality or some imaginary figure, and if you believe in it hard enough, you meditate, it will actually kind of appear to you. You can feel it. And he has this idea that Chris thinks that people like his imaginary husband, Magichan, he thinks since he thinks about them so often, he actually does ultimately believe he's real, but it seems like from what Chris has been saying, his health is deteriorating because he says, like, he now feels like shocks at night and he, like, can't sleep and he keeps getting sick. But yeah, though, because I want to end this on a happy note because there's very little happy to talk about with Chris Chan. But is that he's an exemplar to me, and I think a lot of other people, for both that, you know what, if you want to have a successful life, just don't be like Chris Chan. Just do. It's like George from Seinfeld when he basically does all of the opposite of what he would normally do, and his life is turned around immediately. But it's also that, like, he's like another reason why I want him in a mental hospital is that he is a gold mine of information for psychologists to mine through and figure out, like, this is what happens in, like, the digital age, you know?
Well, it's been well known that it's very common for people that are constantly trolled to become transsexual.
Yeah, it's kind of a meme at this point.
You become what you didn't like initially, though. It's like Chris initially just hated gay people, but then it seems like he hated men in general. Which the Distributist has given this advice a lot for, like, young people that have trouble kind of dating and everything. Is actually good advice to hang around a lot of men your age doing, like, sports or something.
It's actually proven. The Kinsey scale indicates if you have mostly friends, if most of your close friends are male, that actually means you're straight.
Yeah, it's like, you know, the young kid that hangs out with a girl is gonna be probably gay. Even though I really don't want to trust anything Kinsey said, since he was basically just a pedophile.
No, it's pretty well known. Like, this was, like, classical knowledge. Is that you don't want your male children to have female friends. You want them to, not, like, absolutely, but you want them to have overwhelmingly male friends and have male social groups.
Mm-hmm. Somebody saying, like, this is the brain on Sonic autism. There was a period of my life when I was a teenager when I was really into Sonic, but, like, I got out of it because I realized, oh god, Sonic is kind of bizarre and weird. But, like, the Sonic the Hedgehog comics are actually kind of interesting and a little based or good because they never had any gay characters or any, like, SJW nonsense. They were never woke. And they also didn't, like, what kind of infuriates me with a lot of, like, superhero comics is, like, them just restarting canon over and over again. I don't think the Sonic comics did that ever.
No, I don't think so. I haven't read Sonic that much, but I know that DC, I think, has restarted its canon 3 times in 10 years now.
Mm-hmm. That's why it even though, like, I'm not that much, I don't really like it much anymore, is I kind of like how the idea that, like, people have done statistics that, like, if One Piece were to keep going, because Oda has basically said, like, One Piece is going to end at some point, like, he has an ending planned. If it kept going, it would surpass Superman and Batman as the highest grossing comic of all time. And it's a stupid comic about a kid that wants to be a pirate.
Well, so I remember when the new 52 came out, and they only did it for like 2 or 3 years when they reset one of the newer times when they reset the canon. So
For
I
what?
was following Animal Man, which was a Argent. It was a body horror superhero
Of
comic.
course.
So anyway, I was following it, and then I started following Swamp Thing, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then like I remember I went to the store to get new graphic novels, and they're like, nope, they reset the canon again, and they canceled both Swamp Thing and Animal Man in the reset canon. And I'm like,
It's why I kind of like shorter stuff. Like the shonen that I want to get into, Gintama, because that one is like bizarre enough and like has some historical reference, and I think it's kind of cool. And apparently, it's much shorter, and you can actually finish it in a lifetime. But yeah, I generally like shorter stuff. I also started Komi Can't Communicate because I just watched Goblin Slayer and was Akame Got Kill, which are like both really, really super depressing and sad. And I'm like, I just want to read one about a girl who can't communicate and tries to make friends.
I love Goblin Slayer.
It is. Oh, speaking of which, have you seen any of The Mandalorian?
No, I refuse to watch The Mandalorian.
It's actually good. It's kind of like if Goblin Slayer was in the Star Wars universe, because he's doesn't talk a lot, probably has autism, has a lot of self-honor, and is obsessed with small green things. But it's the complete opposite of what the recent Star Wars movies have been, and that it just scaled way back, and it's just like one ATST is a massive threat. It's good. It's good. I just think that they're gonna fuck it up at the end because they do that with all of these shows. Like all of these shows, from Lost to Game of Thrones. It's like it all starts out really strong, and then they have no idea how to write the ending.
Right. Anyways, I think I'm going to cut it off here. Thanks a lot for coming on, guys. Good stream. I hope you guys who are watching this enjoyed it more than the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I had a really good time. That's why I wanted to extend it by talking about Chris Chan.
Sure. So let's see here. Make sure to go follow both Serp and Fritz's channels. Mm-hmm. God bless everyone. Have a good week, and I'll talk to y'all later.